Welcome back. I hope you're all pleasantly refreshed and excited for the final panel discussion that we have here. This is the final panel of the conference, and it is titled Enabling a Just Transition, the Importance of Gender Equality in the New Era. We are fortunate to be joined by the current and upcoming trio presidencies, as well as the Commission shortly. I believe he'll be joining us shortly, about the following objectives: the current priorities for gender equality policy in R&I, so research and innovation, then what areas European policy coordination can focus on as we develop and implement the new era, and through what channels. And then finally, if there are any comments on their priorities that are to be presented shortly in the draft Ljubljana Declaration. Without further delay, I would like to welcome our esteemed guests to get this conversation going. We firstly have, on behalf of Slovenia, Tomaž, the Director General of Science Directorate, Ministry of Education, Science and Sport. Welcome. We then have from Portugal, Helena Pereira, President of the Foundation for Science and Technology. Welcome. And on behalf of France, Sebastian Chevalier, the Head of Service, Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation. And Jan Hrušák, the Czech Academy of Sciences and ESFRI Chair on behalf of Czech Republic. Welcome, Jean-Eric. I'm just introducing the panel. And then we also have Mats Johnsson from the Section for Research Policy at the Ministry of Education and Research in Sweden. And finally, welcome, thank you for joining us, Jean-Eric Paquet, the Director General of DG Research and Innovation at the European Commission. So today, as I've mentioned, our objectives are to look at current priorities as well as future opportunities. But first of all, I'd like to start us off on the conversation around current priorities. So I'd welcome your comments on what the priority areas are for gender equality and research and innovation in your member states, or of course, indeed on behalf of the Commission. Tomaž, I'd be grateful if you could start the discussion, please.
Thank you very much, Chloe. Also, hello to all dear friends, actually so many familiar faces that I'm very glad to see you all today here at the first event of Slovenian presidency. Actually, it's important to say that for us, for Slovenia, at the moment, the national current priorities are quite in line with those we are actually putting forward as a priorities in our presidency work. But nevertheless, maybe just a few points from the national side. First of all, we are preparing a new legislation in the field of research and innovation, where actually we put into the text quite a number of very, very important elements which are important or crucial for gender policies for the future. First of all, actually, we focused very much on equal representation in the governing bodies. Actually, also when talking about the projects and actually the composition of different bodies, it's important to follow the principles of gender equality. I have to say that the legislation is just on its way to the national parliament. The second part, which is important, actually is the preparation of the 10 years national strategy for research and innovation, where the whole chapter is focused on gender equality issues. And I have to say that it's quite in line with the substance of the declaration, Ljubljana Declaration, which will be presented later on. And maybe in the national level, we are not only working on the, let's say, paperwork, but we already started some exploratory projects which will actually explore what is the situation in our research and innovation arena. So at the universities and institutes, what are the rules, what are the actually the problems, and this will be an important input for our next steps in the implementation of the national policies. Maybe now I would like to just shortly move to the presidency part. Actually, for us, the great priority, of course, is the question of era governance. We believe that the ERA governance structure is of crucial importance for adequate addressing of gender issues. And actually, we strictly believe that such a platform should be established, which will actually, in a way, enable the collaboration of different stakeholders, not only from the policy part, but also those from the scientific part, while we believe that the ownership of the ideas, ownership of the whole system is important for success of its implementation. And maybe it's also important, and I would like to stress this as a priority. We strongly believe that exchange of different good practices is of crucial importance. We all know that we have the common goal, but at the same time, we have to be very fully aware that the question of flexibility is of crucial importance, how to manage the actions in different countries that will be complementary and that will lead us to the same goal, which we believe is quite obvious from discussions in the last 2 days. Just for the beginning, I'm passing word back to you, Chloe.
Thank you for those great insights into the upcoming, the current priorities and the upcoming priorities for Slovenia. It's fantastic to hear about the 10-year national strategy and having a look at gender equality through that lens. And actually a lot of your comments around the composition of bodies and the mutual learning, knowledge exchange topics are closely linked to discussions that we've already heard already in this conference, especially, for example, through the stakeholders highlighting the structural importance, looking at the composition across structures. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to invite Helena Pereira to come in to provide the perspective from Portugal. I know that you've just handed over the baton of the presidency over to Slovenia. Thank you. Please.
Yes, good morning to everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. Congratulations for organizing this event, and of course, our warm greetings to the Slovenian presidency. Well, gender equality is at the core of democracy and certainly at the very core of the new era. The full potential of our research and excellence rely on diversity, on inclusiveness, and on an equal footing for women and men. Certainly, gender equality in research and innovation is a wide and transversal matter along the knowledge path from fundamental research to knowledge transfer and innovation, as well as across policies and priorities. Therefore, engaging the EU member states and associated countries and the Commission on creating the adequate mechanisms with an emphasis on their governance and their monitoring is certainly needed to substantiate the priorities we want to address and in a sustainable way. The Council conclusions of last December on the new European research area invited the Portuguese presidency to further develop, in cooperation with Commission, certainly, the topic of research careers and the synergies between ERA and the European education area. We had indeed the opportunity to develop this priority under the Portuguese presidency, and the Council conclusions on deepening the European research area, providing researchers with attractive and sustainable careers and working conditions, and making brain circulation a reality, were in fact adopted in the COMPET meeting of last May 2028. Several important issues are embedded under this large umbrella, and many specifically address gender equality. Let me here highlight only the following: promoting equal opportunities, inclusiveness, and gender balance, namely in career accession and progression, and including top leading positions. Improving conditions for early career researchers, promoting gender equality and removing administrative barriers and fostering meritocracy. Developing statistical data on mobility and talent circulation and identification of gender gaps and labor market dynamics. Implementing an observatory on research careers in the remit of the Commission, and acknowledging the gender equality plans in Horizon Europe as a promising tool to achieve more equality within research careers. It is our conviction that setting attractive and sustainable careers for researchers is at the cornerstone for a sustainable gender equality within the era, and will trigger far-reaching policies and spillover effects on the multiple dimensions of gender equality. We are aware, of course, that gender equality in research, in R&D ecosystems has to be tackled in its wide diversity and transversal nature by many other policies and priorities. And in that sense, we do support the Ljubljana Declaration that will be presented. And of course, we wish Slovenia a most successful presidency of the EU Council. Thank you.
Many thanks, Helena Pereira. That's fascinating stuff. It's particularly interesting to hear the work on the council conclusions. Congratulations on that. It definitely lays a great foundation for the work coming for both the Slovenian presidency and of course the upcoming trio presidency as well on implementing the new era. I particularly would like to also say that it's great to hear the support for Ljubljana Declaration, and you touched on the importance of monitoring and data. I know that within the draft declaration there is discussion around that, particularly looking at the great work of she figures and how we can build off of that. So thank you. At this point in time, I'd now like to invite Sebastian Chevalier to bring in the perspective of France.
Thank you very much, Chloe. Thank you for this invitation. I'm very proud, in fact, to join you in order to share our policies about gender equality, and I'm proud also to describe you the policies seen from France. First of all, the French policies on gender equality is fully consistent with the common declaration of Ljubljana, and the focus I will propose you within the next minutes is totally consistent with the European wish about these topics. In my service at the ministry, there is a full staff that is working day after day about gender equality, about the fight against any types of violences or discrimination. That proves that it is a real strategy, a real wish of the Ministry of Higher Education and Research and Innovation, but from the French government. And it will be a key point of the next presidents of UE in 2022. As you know, that France will be the next one. Maybe I will focus on 3 points concerning the French priorities. The first of all is a general gender equality plan that has been launched in 2020 for all the universities and institutions, from higher education to research institutions. This plan aims to support higher education institutions in the development and the implementation of a really ambitious plan for gender equality. It was built around 4 axes. The first one consists in the work-life balance and organization culture. The second one is a gender balance in leadership and decision-making. The third one is gender equality in a recruitment, career and career progressions, including salaries. And the last one is to take some measures against gender-based violence, including sexual harassment. The second focus of priority for France at the moment in higher education and research institutions concern a national action plan against gender-based violence and discrimination. This was announced by Frédéric Vidal, the Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation. And this is a 5 years plan with several millions euro injected in the area of universities and research institutions in order to fight against any types of harassment, sexual and sexist violences. I will detail the plan later, and then I will focus to the last French priority, that is to encourage women in science, technologies, and engineering, to be ambitious in order to have a good and beautiful career in those fields. Most of the time, they limit themselves and they are not so ambitious about careers in such topics. It is what we call in French, I'm sorry, I don't know how to translate it in English, is to destroy the plafond de verre. That is this limit given by themselves about ambitious career. Just to finish about the national plan about gender equality, at the moment, after only several months in order to get the plan from the universities, 95% of the universities sent their plan to the ministry. So it says two things. They are ready, and they were ready to answer the commands of the government. And it is really a social event that has been taken by the universities, by the professors, by the rectors and the president of the universities. And I feel pretty optimistic for the future because it is now a full topic, a full subject of our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's heartening to hear that gender equality is so embedded across your work there, and also that there's so many commonalities with the Ljubljana Declaration that's shortly going to be presented. I think a topic that I'd really like to come back on, perhaps, and welcome views on the panel, is the point around the fact that you've got this whole team around you in your institute, and what can we do to foster some of the learning exchange from countries such as yourself to other countries which may be earlier on in their journey. And that's something we've discussed across the 2 days of the conference. Thank you. Okay, now I'd love to bring in the Czech perspective. Jan Hrušák, please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm in a bit difficult situation because I'm not directly engaged with the ministry, so I am now here representing the ministry. And I also see as a duty to represent here partially the European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures. So I will try to bring into discussion the perspectives from both organizations. First, let me bring a few comments on priorities from the national perspective, and later on I may eventually comment on some let's say European issues in the other part from the perspective of research infrastructures. So the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports of the Czech Republic has a long recognized importance of gender equality in science and research. There are dedicated measures for supporting development of policies, and in 2001 the ministry already initiated a specific support granted to the Center for Gender and Science at the Institute of Sociology of the Czech Academy of Sciences. And in that sense, the ministry is already now deeply committed to the principles underlying the Ljubljana Declaration, and it is instantly implementing steps for further battle the gender inequality in research. This year, new funding covering the entire period of Horizon Europe has been committed by the ministry to support Czech research organizations and universities in meeting the gender equality requirements of the new Horizon Europe program and initiating internal changes within the institutions, support the process, and so to ensure a Czech contribution to this priority under the new era concept. We will continue working on it during the Czech presidency, following and continuing the work of our Slovenian and French colleagues as it has been articulated today. Currently, the primary topic of concern in Czech Republic is the combination of research careers and family commitment. Even so, parents have, at least in principle, to choose 2, 3, or 4 years parental leave. This is often a mere theory because childcare facilities are limited in scope. So in consequence, this has tremendous impact, particularly on women's research careers. And the statistical analysis conducted by the Center for Gender and Science shows that childbearing period after PhD and the first postdoc stages where women drop out of research the most are critical stages in their careers, and we shall develop and implement corrective measures to battle that. So last year, the Czech government has adopted and updated the Czech National Research Development and Innovation Policy for the next 7 years, which for the first time also addresses concerns related to gender equality and specifically the parenthood of researchers' employment after parental leave. And one of the incentives for more efficient human resource development in the research organizations is also the new methodology for the assessment of research organizations. This methodology is in Czech a very, very important tool as it is shaping the research environment in the Czech Republic very, very much. And contrary to the previous evaluation exercises conducted prior 2020, the new methodology now takes into considerations also criteria like quality of the institutional environment that stimulates research organizations to provide scientists with more internationally competitive conditions for development of research careers, taking also into consideration gender-related issues. So in the future, the ministry will continue to support institutional changes ongoing at the Czech scene. It will provide support to research organizations also by using the European structural and investment funds. The new operational program called Johannes Amos Comenius, which is currently being negotiated with the European Commission, shall provide measures to invest into development of institutional actions, activities to improve the institutional environment in research organizations to better combine research careers and family commitments. Another measure that's foreseen is to provide so-called return grants for early career researchers to support a restart of their scientific careers after parental leave. So this is just few examples from our national scene, which I would like to present here. And I am looking very much forward for discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Despite how you opened that, saying, oh, perhaps I won't have the same floor, I think you've highlighted so many measures. There's definitely a lot of content there that the Czech Republic's well underway with. It's fantastic again to hear your support for the Ljubljana Declaration, and it's really interesting to hear about the RNI policy, the updated RNI policy, and the measures, of course, for early family support for parental leave. I think that's quite timely when we look at the impacts that have happened over due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the burden of care often falling largely onto women rather than men. And so hearing ways of being able to reflect from that impact into our day-to-day lives post-pandemic is fantastic to hear there. Thank you, Jan. Now I'd like to bring in Mats Johnsson to bring the perspective of Sweden, because you'll be the final trio presidency in the final presidency in the upcoming trio. Please, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just introduce myself, Mats Johnsson at the Swedish Minister of Education and Research. I would like to start with the same key as Jan, with the difficulties, as to say. And this is just short, and going from rain to sunshine. Our government resigned 3 weeks ago, and they are taking office again this afternoon. So now we have a transition government, and it was a political or legal difficulties. Who can be representing Sweden in these circumstances? And they came to the conclusion at the Prime Minister's Office Legal Services, yes, I can speak as a civil servant, as a private person, but I can't speak as a representative of the government. That's the legal part of it. But of course, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything that's not against the government, of course. But I just want to tell you, so I am an amateur coming into this, and my colleague who's been working, Beate Elland, on the discussion on the Ljubljana declaration, she asked me to sit in for her since she's on vacation. I gladly do, because they give me the opportunity to study the Swedish situation. And what I have noticed as a civil servant, that our government, 2014, the Social Democrat and Environmental Party, they formed a coalition, and they started out with a high key that gender equality should be the key, one of the keystones for their policies. That means equal representation of women and men in all sectors of society, and gender issues should be included in all areas of politics. And they didn't start out from scratch. Of course, there's a Swedish law that there is gender equality in sectors of society, and also that all sectors of society should work for gender equality. So in that sense, there's continue it. And what this would mean for research and development area, and here we come into more newer things, as to say, they had 3 primarily issues as their priorities, and they're still working on it. And I suppose that the government are going to take form this afternoon, going to continue the same. It's promote the recruitment of women professors, so we can have an equal representation of men and women in the future. What they said, and it's already achieved, that by 2030, 50% of all recruited professors should be women. I think we already passed that figures in that sense. And another one, we should have equal representation of women and men in all areas of science. This is much more difficult. We have worked hard to get more women into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because there are very few. And it's the same in all countries. And one reason it's difficult might be that there's a less interest among women to study these areas. And our minister, so far, and also from this afternoon, she has also stressed that it's two-sided coin. It's not only to get more women into some areas, we also have to get men into areas where there are our female majority. Humanities and social sciences in these countries, we have more than 50% of female professors already. And then you have to work on both sides to get more men into those areas. And a more difficult issue for them is to say, they also talked about we should have a gender perspective. That's part of the politics in general, but also gender perspective in science. And this has been heavily criticized from the scientific sector. Scientists said that science should be free. We should do everything that we think is right for science. And if you force us to have a gender perspective, this is decreasing the freedom of science. Yes, possibly, but still, it's still there, and government has stressed it several times. And our Research Council for Fundamental Research has this as a core principle when they are distributing the funding. So far, we haven't seen that it's been attacking the freedom of research, but it's still, there's a discussion on it. So it's not always easy, but it works. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, and I appreciate the sensitivity. It's understood there, but it is still really interesting to hear some of the work that is going underway, such as the promotion of women professors. That's definitely something that was touched upon yesterday by our welcome addresses by Commissioner Gabriel and Minister Kustec, who discussed the data on PhD equivalency, but that there is more to be done around professorship. And indeed, I think that links well with the comments from Sebastian Chevalier around leadership as well, and gender balance there. So thank you very much for that input.
Thank you.
Last but not least, I would like to welcome Jean-Éric Paquet to input from the Commission's perspective. I know that there's a lot of work underway at the moment around the Pact for R&I and other areas around the area governance and wider area implementation. So it would be great to hear your thoughts on current priorities for gender equality in R&I. Thank you.
Chloe, thank you very much. Good morning, dear colleagues and friends. I think maybe I should start by saying that gender and diversity remain a top political priority for the Commission, and this does indeed translate in the work on the European research area, which we are developing jointly with Member States and Presidency. It was visible in the communication of the European research area. It was very well put forward in Council conclusions. Under German presidency. I'm grateful to our Portuguese and Slovene colleagues who continue to promote gender equality and diversity in research under their presidencies. And I hope that the work we are doing on the Pact for Research and Innovation, where for the first time we will have a legal text which will set out key principles for carrying out research and research policies in the EU, will cover quite ambitiously also gender equality and diversity. We want beyond the Pact and this statement of principles, I mean our shared values, there will also be a policy agenda following the Pact, which is again developed closely with presidencies and member states. And one component will be to work on inclusive gender equality plans with member states. So expect on the policy level a very ambitious work ahead. And this reflects, I think, a need in the sense that politically gender equality is well carried throughout all national research and innovation system. It goes much beyond research, obviously. It's a top priority for our leaders and expectation, a very high expectation across our societies. But I think it is more needed than ever because the data, we will release the SHE report again later this year. The data is, of course, showing some improvement. I think it will also show some erosion. The pandemic has not been very kind on the gender agenda and on women researchers particularly. So I think we need to continue to be really mobilized to ensure that the progress which has been made in the last decade, which is insufficient but real, is maintained, and that we remain ambitious to really go towards parity. I would like to give you a few also illustrations of more concrete policy measures which are in preparation and which will be implemented, in particular under Horizon Europe. But before I do that, I would also like to boast for half a second and say that for DG Research and Innovation, we are at parity for management. In fact, we have more female managers than male managers. So my challenge is now a bit reversed. I need to find male managers to get to parity. But that I think is really a particularly good development. And I observe in this department, as I've seen in other places in the Commission, that parity changes the quality of management. I think there's just so much evidence, including empirical, that I'm really pleased that now the DG is at parity and in fact a little bit above in terms of female management. The same is nearly there for our research agencies, the European Innovation Council, the Research Executive Agency, the European Research Council Executive Agency. They are not yet at parity, but they are really close to parity. So I think that's really a good step. And we are, if you want to walking the talk, also in terms of our own setups. Now under Horizon Europe, and I think this is really important also for the audience, we want to go one step further in using our common program to promote this agenda. And there's going to be one important novelty. I'm sure you're all aware of it, but I think I need to repeat it each time because it's a major change, and I want that to be completely understood because there's still a little bit of time to deal with it, which is that we will make gender equality plans an eligibility requirement to participate in Horizon Europe when you are a public research organization. Many of you have these gender equality plans in place, but not all of you by far. We believe, and I think this is very much shared with national administrations, national contact points, university association, research organizations, the direction I think is well agreed. And we need to have these gender equality plans across all research institutions in Europe. So if you bid now for funding in the Horizon Europe, if the call closes at the beginning of 22, you will need to have a gender equality plan in place by the moment of contract signature. Likely to happen for call closure in January, likely to happen a bit after the summer of 22. So there's another year for you who don't yet have these gender equality plans to work on them to ensure that by the moment of contract signature, there's not a bad surprise where you will find that you cannot sign the contract if these gender equality plans are not in place. I mean, I don't want to dwell too much on what a gender equality plan is, because I take it that in this setup, you all know what it is, but it's a public document. It commits you as an institution. It has resources dedicated to it, so it needs to be genuine. It, of course, needs to be evidence-based, and it must have institutional development training elements to ensure that the objectives of your gender equality plan can effectively translate in improvements on the ground, as was described by all speakers during this panel. So be mindful of that and get going. We are, of course, on the Commission side, but also most national administrations available to support you in drawing up these gender equality plans. You have another year to get them in place. Now, in Horizon Europe, of course, there are other dimensions, I think, and one really important one too, which is known but not often enough put forward, I find, is that for any research topic, by default, we expect you to provide us data and analysis on the gender dimension of your research. And this is not just a requirement on paper, this is then part also of the analysis on the excellence of your project. So be mindful, by default, this is expected. If we believe in the work program and call preparation that this is not needed, we will say it explicitly, but by default, you are expected to provide it. So, I mean, overwhelmingly, there will be a gender dimension covered in the research supported under Horizon Europe. Obviously, we hope to see also more female researchers involved in these projects. We will also have parity in boards and evaluation setups. We have progressed quite a bit in the Horizon Europe. We'll bring it to the next level under Horizon Europe, and we will have full parity in evaluation and boards as we move forward. We hope that with that we can have a bit of impact. And of course, there will be gender-related research per se, which of course will also be supported and funded under Horizon Europe. So that's the scope of what is happening. And I think it does echo what is done at national level, where things really happen now. And so what we are doing aims at structurally supporting what member states are doing already. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. There's a lot there. And actually the gender equality plans, we had a full session on it yesterday where we heard from stakeholders about the impact and the opportunity and of course the challenges as well, because as I've already touched upon here, there are some discrepancies, and you drew that out too, between different member states on their road to having gender equality plans embedded for their funding opportunities. I also would like to touch on the great work that you highlighted around the policy agenda, which will be coupled with the PAT for R&I, or not coupled, will come as a result of the PAT for R&I, and how you touched on wider inclusion. I think that again echoes a common theme across these 2 days, where it's taking a step beyond gender equality. Yes, gender equality is really important, but there's an intersectional dimension to this as well. And we must look at diversity and inclusion beyond just the gender dimension. So that was really heartening to hear. I think you've actually set us up very well for the next discussion topic there. So I suggest that we move straight in to look at the opportunities for coordination in the new era, supporting us to achieve a just green and digital transition, because of course these are the priority twin transitions in front of us. I would like to invite at this point in time, I suggest we stick to the same order. So if we could bring the current presidency in first, Tomaž, could you talk to us a bit about where you view the opportunities for coordination to be? And of course, if you think there are any specific channels, to highlight those as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Chloe. Actually, I will continue where I stopped in the previous intervention, while actually this is somehow very closely connected. I'm very, very happy to hear during the discussion that majority of the plans or majority of national policies are very well in line with the proposed Ljubljana Declaration. So it means that we are all sharing more or less the same values and more or less the same goals. And actually, I believe that the first challenge for us will be in the question or in the field of international cooperation. While the gender issue for sure is one of the topics which actually somehow connect or somehow trigger the countries internally, so inside the EU, but at the same time, it is of crucial importance for the international collaboration. While there is a very, very clear goal or focus of the era, and that we should focus on the common values, common goals also in the international collaboration. So actually we should and we have to share our views on gender equality also with our partners in the field of international collaboration. The second part I would like to say was already mentioned several times, but still the gender equality plans for sure are a great issue for the future. And there is a great discrepancy between different countries. So there is a ultimate need for a collaboration, for exchange of views, for using, first of all, actually introducing and using the common platforms for exchange of views. Maybe one of these elements was already used during the preparation phase for this conference in March this year, when we organized together with the Commission and with the stakeholders, the conference JEPS as a catalyst for a change. And actually this was an important channel for inputs for this conference, for the national activities, and also we believe it should be one of this kind of exchange of views, the way how to do it also in the future. The next thing I would like to say and stress is that actually the gender equality issues should be also somehow implemented in other policies. Today we talked a lot about the research and innovation policy, but at the same time we all know that it's so horizontal topic that it should be implemented also in other ministries, in other policy domains. So actually this is probably the next success factor which should be somehow taking into account when talking about the national and also on the EU level discussions about the gender equality. And the third point I would like to mention, and it's already mentioned several times as well, is the question of green digital and green transition. And actually, as mentioned yesterday during the discussion, the synergies between the education and the research and gender equality in this respect. While we are now facing a new challenges, of course, digitalization, and also as Jean-Eric already mentioned, the pandemics actually brings quite a number of new challenges, and majority of them are not in favor for gender equality. So we have to be very, very sensitive when actually making policies, introducing them, that actually these policies will be gender sensitive ones, and that will underpin somehow our efforts actually to introduce as much as possible again and again debates and actions related to the gender equality.
Thank you, Tomaž. Yes, there's a lot of opportunity there by the sounds of it, especially as we progress with delivering the new European research area. And it's fantastic to hear about the workshop that was held earlier this year and how that's bringing in stakeholders' views into the development there. I'm sure, as you said, panelists agree that this is a cross-cutting issue. And so where can we learn not just from each other in research and innovation fields, but beyond that? How can we look beyond research and innovation into other areas and learn across the different fields? Without further ado, though, I'd like to bring in Helena Pereira to talk about it from a Portuguese perspective, where perhaps you see you can build off of the great work that you've already conducted under your presidency, and we can take that forward into the further delivery of the era. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the ERA communication puts gender equality as a core value. And as such, it is a long-term and a really constituent part of the ERA. And gender equality, therefore, is to be taken into account on the same footing as open science, digital skills, research assessment, diversification of research careers, multiple career paths, and many other aspects. We know that digital and green transformation will deeply impact globally and also the new era, and will generate losses, of course, but also new opportunities for jobs and research and innovation. In this context, stimulating policies for women to pursue their studies and to engage with research in relevant fields will be critical, we think, to enable a just transition with no one left behind. To support the development of the new era, of course, several very relevant instruments are already on the ground. But to enable just and swift transition, we face challenges that call for further coordination. Let me name a couple of them. First, exploiting synergies between the several European instruments and mobilizing other EU policies and programs so that we can maximize positive impacts. Also, ensuring a transversal, human-centered and inclusive approach based on common European values and ethical principles, of course, including gender equality. And also triggering new gender-sensitive policies to counter gendered competence gaps. Well, within member states, we need to involve all the relevant actors, research funding organizations, research performing organizations, researchers, innovators, with a renewed focus on gender equality and mainstream, including gender equality plans and integration of the gender dimension into the R&I context. Jean-Éric already told very important things about the implementation of these gender equality plans within Horizon Europe. Specifically, I think the research funding organizations should set advanced measures for a non-gender biased allocation of research funding. Of course, this is, for instance, in our case, an issue that we are very much involved in and pursuing with great attention. Between member states and the Commission, we have, of course, to strengthen the strategic interaction in all possible fora, in the Council, as through the dedicated ERA group and through synergies among other ERA groups as well, advising Iraq, the Council, and the Commission. Ensuring that this topic's discussion is at the level of the strategic committees, and acknowledge concrete measures concerning gender equality at the level of Horizon Europe. Namely, and we heard that from Jean-Éric, the gender equality plans, and also the widening and ERA part of Horizon Europe in implementing 2 calls for gender equality. Also, and to finish, we need to combine the European higher education area and the ERA This is a crucial aspect in our belief. We should exploit synergies and more joint actions that may further allow for a knowledge triangle approach, linking the need for new skills to the new opportunities for research, in particular stemming from the green and, of course, digital transition. Thank you.
Thank you. I like that little image of a knowledge triangle approach. I think that's quite a good way to depict it. And it's interesting to hear your emphasis on policies as well, similar to what Tomaž had spoken about on there. And actually, I'd like to touch on the twin transitions, how you mentioned it's a global consideration. And I think that ties in quite well with the recent communication on the global approach too. That we've heard on research and innovation, and what work will be undertaken under this presidency and the coming ones to implement that. I'm conscious of time, and we have 10 minutes, and I want to hear from all of you. So Sebastian, I invite you in, but please, if we can keep it as concise as possible without stripping out of the important content, please. Yes,
I will do my best. Maybe I really appreciate what the previous colleagues said about the new era. And to my opinion, I will focus maybe on in the new era, but also in the Ljubljana Declaration. There is one focus in which I'm fully interested at the moment. Because it is in the strategy of France, and it will be in the strategy of France as a presidency for European Union. It concerns the paragraph dealing on gender-based violence and harassment. And to my opinion, we have to catch this topic that is very, very important for the society, but also for the education of the youth that are now in our universities. To my opinion, it's our responsibility to take into account the evolution of the societies that aim ambitious policies about equality, fight against harassment or any type of violence. And it is a huge responsibility for the governments, for the UE, but also for the universities. I would like to, maybe 4 goals are the most important to my opinion. The first one is a massive and systematic training of members of the higher education community. It means students, of course, but also all permanent staff, but also the people that are governing the universities, rectors and presidents. The second concerns the professionalization of a reporting mechanism dealing with equality, violence, harassment. We need to build new services within universities in order to let the students having the good door in order to say, okay, yesterday there was a problem during an internship, there was a problem during a stay for my studies in France or abroad, there is a problem with a professor and so on. The third thing is the communication. There are already many devices, tools inside the universities, but most of them are fully unknown by the student. So we have to communicate at the local level, but also at the national level in order to let the students having all the opportunities to declare any trouble about that topics. And the last one is the promotion of initiative taken by students. They have many ideas. They have already made a lot, but it is at the very small level. So now how to encourage this initiative to have a larger level and eventually a national level. And just to finish, it is ambitious, of course, but it is our responsibility. But I'm sure that we will succeed in making the zero tolerance the general rule in all universities and institutions. And I really appreciated what said Tomaž about a catalyst for change. I do believe that what we are doing today but what we are doing during the presidency of European Union, we are catalysts for change in the topics of equality, harassment fights, and the fight against all types of violences. Thank you.
Thank you. What a great message to end on, and hearing the unity across the previous presidencies into the future. It's also really a positive sign that we can keep the momentum going. I think your emphasis on gender-based violence, it chimes very well with the Ljubljana Declaration, as you've mentioned. There's a focus on there. And also I like the focus on the youth and how we can ensure that we embed these practices in youth. That's something actually that yesterday in the stakeholder session, the president of CESAR, the Conference of European Schools for Advanced Engineering, Education and Research, emphasized as well. He linked the fact that we must embed these practices from a education perspective, and it links to the synergies that Helena also touched on here as well. Okay, thank you. I would now like to welcome Jan Hrušák to briefly touch on where he thinks there could be opportunities. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, thank you for the floor. And let me put, as earlier announced now, a little bit my ESFRI hat on, even though it's not such far from the Czech presidency, because research infrastructures are of very high priority also there. And by the way, I mean, it's worth mentioning that in the executive board of ESFRI, we had over years a parity in share of men and women, and now even after the recent reconstruction, we have more female than male members. And I observe similar situation, even though not such pronounced, in the management of research infrastructures, where I believe to see higher share of women than it's the case in other research organizations. Nonetheless, the issue of HR development and equal opportunities, it's an important aspect of functioning of the entire research infrastructure ecosystem. And I believe it's equally important for ERA, of which research infrastructures are an important component. So ESFRI is very well aware of the importance of properly tackling gender equality and diversity issues, and already in the ESFRI report on long-term sustainability of research infrastructures, we have addressed extensively the need of having right people at the right place at the right time. And this concerns equally the competencies as it tackles the various gender-related aspects. And we are extending on that further, and in the last year's published white paper, Making Sense Happen, one of which key messages is to foster general attractiveness of careers in the research infrastructure domain, including by properly accounting for gender issues. We continue to provide advice along the same line. ESFRI is also contributing in addressing the gender bias in research, not only by its active participation in the discussions on the pact or other related issues on the new ERA concept, but also by very practical steps. So gender aspects are already now a part of the assessment of new research infrastructure projects applying for a position on the ESFRI roadmap. And this is both at the administrative and managerial side of the proposal, as well as on the side of the evaluation of user or access policies or setting research agendas. So also here we are very much aware of the importance of equal balance and equal opportunities, and we are trying to promote that further in concrete steps. Just one short comment on gender equality plans. I mean, formally, this new challenge for research infrastructures as a prerequisite or eligibility criterion for Horizon Europe applications. I'm quite sure this is already now heavily investigated by the research infrastructure management. They're investing effort in adjusting their internal processes and policies to maintain their really leading role also in this domain, similarly as they have done successfully in following on or mastering the request on data management plans. I would like to stop here and thank you.
Thank you. It's great to hear actually some input around the research infrastructures, because they are key. And that was something that was brought up yesterday again by the stakeholder session, that they were talking about the whole structural system around it. So I'm going to now swiftly move on to Matt Johnsson. I appreciate that you may not feel that you're in a position to mention anything about the future priorities, but I thought I'd give you an opportunity just in case.
Yes, thank you. No, I can't say anything about future opportunities or plans for our presidency, but I would like to start out, Chloe, where you said this is beyond gender dimension. Well, it's not only say equality. Why equality? One thing is democracy, of course, but the other thing is we have a better society if we mix equal men and women. And also my own area where I worked in the gender part is the STEM, to get more women into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we might pride ourselves in Sweden that we are good and well ahead on this, but we're not, because in STEM we are worse out than most other European countries. We can't get any interest from women to study STEM, even if we have programs for them and so on. And one thing we have done to try to make sure that there's no discrimination against women is when we go to the Research Council, and they have courses for expert panels to look at gender dimension when they read application and when they assess application from men and from women. And one interesting notice that I have noticed, or two I can give you. One is that if you have panels with majority of men, which still might happen in especially STEM and engineering, and they are biased towards women. So they give more funding to women, that groups that are more equally represented, men and women. Perhaps one thing is they want to ensure that they are not discriminating women. I also notice another part, this is only my own notion, but since we don't have a government, I can talk freely. When doing this, we want to have women represented at all areas. And for instance, in areas like engineering, where we have very few women, we have a tendency to overuse women. We recruit them to our panels, recruit them to our boards, so they don't have much time over to do their research. And that's also working against their own scientific future. So we have to be cautious too and listen to the base, as I say, what do they want from us? I was, since now I'm going to hand over to the next commission, as you mentioned, Horizon Europe. As you mentioned, that we have to have gender equality plans for when we have a contract education, and Horizon Europe is the big opportunity for Europe. Now this is the biggest research program in the world. So if we want to do something together, this is the opportunity to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that was really helpful introductions. And interesting again that you mentioned the emphasis of women researchers ending up becoming overdrawn upon in relevant boards, because this again has been a common theme that's been discussed in this across these 2 days. And actually, where do we want to assess what do we mean by gender equality within research? Is it just researchers within pure research, or is it the broader structure as well? So that's interesting.
Exactly. Can I ask that? Sometimes when I sit from the political level, working from the government, I have a feeling sometimes we want to solve our own problems to have equal representative in boards, and we're looking for women, but we are forcing them out of their basic research, and that means that they won't be good scientists either. Which we have to keep that in mind.
Yes,
it indeed is. Yes.
So I apologize that we've overrun, and I thank you so much to all of the panelists. Jean-Éric Paquet, if you have time, it would be great to hear from your perspective, from the Commission's perspective, the opportunities for coordination in the new era. And I am grateful to all the panelists, because I am aware that we've had too much to discuss. Thank you.
No, Chloe, I can be very short. I think it was really all well covered by my fellow panel members, and I covered already the pact and the policy agenda in implementation of the pact, where gender and diversity will be front and center. I think what I can add is to say that, of course, delivery of these gender ambitions are happening in national research and innovation system and in institutions which are distributed across all 27 member states. So this is where the action now needs to be. You can count on the Commission to keep it at the top of the agenda. You can count on us also to gently prod member states into action. We will, of course, do that as well. And I'm really very impressed to see how much member states are keen also to work collectively, share practices, but also develop a common agenda to help themselves then produce these reforms and improvements in the national setup. What I think I can also add is to say that this can only happen with stakeholders, and stakeholders, I think, is not the right word. The right word is actors of research and innovation. This is where the action is now needed. So this is where the expectation is. Of course, I think actors should also rally around agenda ambition to push administrations where relevant. So this is probably also something to be kept in mind. But then delivering will be your responsibility. I said it earlier on. The Commission, as far as it is concerned, is of course available with support, technical assistance, as you discussed in the gender equality plans. But this covers a broader set of support measures. We are available for that. And I very much expect to see quite a bit of progress in the next few months. Thanks.
Thank you, and I'm grateful for your short interjection there. But it is, you're quite right. There's it is heartening to see all of these member states come together and see opportunities for knowledge exchange, and that there is now a opportunity at the national level to take this forward. And of course, the important role of stakeholders or actors, as you say, within our research and innovation area, to embed these practices and challenge us as member states on our national action plans too. I must also say that there's it's great to hear the support available, because that has been something that has been drawn upon and highlighted across the 2 days, is the different levels of progress on the gender equality path across the member states. And so to have the Commission support there will be essential in some cases to be able to embed effective gender equality plans that we can implement and assess and evaluate and build upon. So thank you. Well, there was so much to say and far too little time. Thank you for all of your input into this panel. I'm afraid the time has come to draw this session to a close, if not quite late. What a stimulating discussion. It's been really excellent to get an insight into the Trio Pres and Commission's priorities in this upcoming period, and of course what we've already conducted too. As you will all be key players in the design of the new era alongside our fellow member states as well. Among the discussion, I note a few key areas that link very well with the draft Ljubljana Declaration that will be shortly presented. These include gender as a horizontal principle, the importance of data monitoring and evaluation to stimulate continuous growth, the value of tools such as the gender equality plans, and of course, the important topic of gender-based violence. On behalf of the organisers and the audience, I sincerely thank you all for your time and active contribution today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.